Hey guys, welcome to our next unit. This is the epic poetry unit, and we'll often just call it the epic, okay? We're going to talk about what that is in a bit. For now, I want to talk to you about how I expect you to answer questions, what to look for, and kind of what to expect, because these I-Learns are going to be a little bit different than previous I-Learns that we've had so far. So for starters, I will be asking questions within the slides whenever I give you slides, which won't be every day, but you'll have some slides. And when I do, you should look for these symbols, okay? These symbols show you like what I expect you to answer. There will be a document on Classroom, and it should be titled Honors English 1, I Learned Day 21 Questions or something like that. But it'll be on your Day 21 Classroom link whenever you click there. And basically there'll be a spot for any questions. There are more questions in this slideshow that I expect you to answer. But I should, unless I've missed any, which is entirely possible, they should all be marked with this, okay? So if we were in class, which I wish we were in class because this is one of my favorite units. It ranks up there with short stories and the novel. But if we were in class, I would say, okay, before we start reading, let's see what you remember or what you already know. So for your bell ringer, you will need to write these questions down or answer them in that doc, rather. What do you already know about ancient Greek civilization? And what advantages do you see in worshiping many different gods? And then also what disadvantages. So for number 1, I don't expect you to write me a huge book, but make a list of anything you know from previous classes about ancient Greek civilization. And then for number 2, because in Greek mythology they worshipped many different gods, think of it not from a religious perspective, because I don't think any of us worship multiple gods and goddesses in modern times. However, what advantage could you see possibly in them doing that, given that they were a much less advanced society? And then what disadvantages also go along with that? So you can pause the video and answer this now, or you can come back to it later. So the Odyssey by Homer. Now Homer's a guy we're going to talk about in a little bit of depth. And the next slide, actually, I'm going to have you pause this video and go watch the other video, unless you've already watched it. He gets talked about here. So if you have, this video is linked on Classroom, okay? If you have not watched it yet, I want you to pause my video, go watch this one. It's about 45 minutes, but you have to have this information in order to move forward, okay? This video is very important. Without it, you are going to be lost for the next however many days. You're going to be lost to the rest of this unit, okay? In class, I would make you take notes while you watch it. I'm not going to make you take notes. I actually took notes for you. I typed them out. I can't remember if they're on Classroom or not, but I will share those with you if they're not. And you just really need to watch this. So I'm going to pause just for a second so that way you have time to pause the video and not lose anything. And then we're going to keep going. So go ahead, pause my video, watch the video on Classroom. Okay, so you've paused my video, you've come back, you've watched this video, and you've come back to my video. Let's talk about it. So this is a video quiz. If we were in class, yes, this would be a quiz. This would be a quiz grade if we were in class. Because we're not in class, it's not going to be a quiz grade, but it is kind of a little, and you can't see me right now, but I'm doing air finger quotes, quiz. So you have to have watched the video to answer these questions. So if you haven't watched it, if you decided to skip that part, you may want to pause now and go back and watch. But number 1, explain your impression of Odysseus after having watched the video. This says refer back to your notes. Like I said, I took notes for you. They are not on Classroom yet. I just looked, but I will put them on Classroom if you think that would be helpful. They are very long. The video is 45 minutes. The notes were typed and many pages, but I would be happy to share that with you. If you are doing this at home and you picked up paper copies, you have all the notes already in your packet, because I wasn't sure if you'd have access to videos. If you do have access to videos and you just can't turn things in online, that's great. I'm going to put those same notes on Classroom as soon as I finish making this video. So, explain your impression of Odysseus after having watched the video. What do you think about him and why? Based on the video, why did the trip for Odysseus take 10 years instead of 2 weeks? If you watch the video, you'll understand that this and this are kind of important, the 10 years and the 2 weeks, and then give details. So here's how I know you watched the video. Clever me, right? From the video, what have you learned about how the Greeks viewed hospitality? This theme right here is very, very important. Very, very important. Very, very important. Can I say it one more time? Very, very important to the Odyssey, okay? So what did you learn from the video about how the Greeks viewed hospitality? What are their thoughts on it and why? According to the video, why is the theme homecoming an important theme in literature? One more time. Very, very important. Very, very important. Very, very important, okay? So hospitality and homecoming are both very important themes in what we're going to read. And then, number 5, what is the meaning of the word Odyssey as defined in the video? So not defined by dictionary.com, not defined by what you think in your brain, as defined in the video, what is the meaning of the word Odyssey? Okay, so you'll need to answer those. Again, that document that I have, let me pull it up to make sure. It has a space for all these questions. So it'll say, please answer the questions on the attached Google Slides presentation here or on your own paper. If you do it on your own paper, I would really appreciate you turning it in on Classroom either way. So there's slide 1 with 2 spots, slide 4 with 4 spots, and then there's another one that we're going to get to in a minute. So let's talk about Homer for a minute. Homer was a blind, nomadic storyteller. Okay, if you don't know what nomadic means, it means they travel and don't have a home base. So if you're a nomad, maybe you, like a modern nomad would be like someone who lived in tents and hitchhiked around just to explore and didn't have a day job. But in this case, he was a blind nomadic storyteller. So he moved around and he made his living telling stories. Probably he would tell these stories and then get coins or money. He was born around 800 to 850 BC. So that's BC is before the year 0, right? So he's before that. So it's been a minute. And he told stories out loud. None of his stories, he didn't write down any of his stories. He was blind. It is difficult to write when you're blind. We do have Braille, and there are Braille typewriters, which are wonderful. But if you're blind, you cannot see the paper to write, and they didn't have typewriters in 800 or 850 BC. So, yeah, it was an oral tradition. He was a storyteller, not a story writer. There are many theories about Homer, and I say theories because none of them can be proven or have been proven. Also, my kids are screaming upstairs, so if you hear it, just ignore it. There are many theories. One of them was that these poems were actually not written by Homer, that he actually didn't write them. Instead, they were created by a group of poets and then shared under like the name Homer, which is a common theme. We kind of talked about the same thing with Shakespeare. There's another theory that Homer was a woman. We don't know for sure. This is an image that has been attributed as being Homer, but we're not sure if that's him. Does it matter in the long run? It does not matter in the long run. But these theories exist, and it's important to know that we're not sure that he wrote it. It's not like we can say he's like Stephen King, who we know for sure wrote something, right? So the Odyssey, it says the Odyssey of Homer, which is kind of a misnomer because it's the Odyssey of Odysseus written by Homer. Anyway, we think it was written during the 7th or 8th century BC, which would be right around the time that he was alive. This is kind of the specific date. Is that really important? No, other than to say that it was a really long time ago. And the longer ago something was written, the less reliable our sources are, and we don't really know what the original looked like. It describes the experiences of the hero Odysseus as he makes his way home from the Trojan War. So Odysseus and Odyssey. Can you make a connection between these two words? And also, my daughter may come downstairs. We'll push through it because she's very loud. So it describes Odysseus' experiences as he makes his way home from the Trojan War after fighting in the Trojan War for 10 years. Okay, this should be noted, and we'll talk about it later as well. 10 years. The journey takes him 10 years, so that's an additional 10 years, after having already been away for 10 years. So he has been away from home. He leaves home to fight in the Trojan War. He doesn't make it home for 20 more years. Okay? That's kind of a big deal. The Odyssey, an Odyssey, as you'll learn from the video, is an extended trip, right? It's a long trip. It's a, the word is based on this story, right? It's a long, dangerous trip with many trials and tribulations along the way. So it would make sense that a trip should take 20 years. And we're going to learn that the trip should have taken a much shorter amount of time. So we're not going to jump into the Odyssey today, but we are going to talk about some elements of it, okay? So we have the epic and an epic hero. An epic is a long narrative poem about important events in the history or folklore of a nation or culture. Now, I showed you guys my copy of the Odyssey and the Iliad. It was that big blue book with the gold around the pages. That was 2 poems, okay? So when I say a long narrative poem, I mean a long narrative poem, right? A book-length poem. And it says about important events. So whenever you've heard the term, oh man, that's epic. Wow, that is so cool, that's epic. It's because it's about something important, right? And this one says it's in the history of or folklore of a nation or culture. I assume that it could be about something else if you wanted it to be, but it's probably going to hit home more if you decide to write an epic, is about something important in history or in a mythology, a folklore, the stories behind a culture. And also, that sound that you hear now is my dog pacing behind me, and I'm not sure. My house is kind of a zoo right now, so bear with me. An epic hero. An epic hero is a larger-than-life character who demonstrates traits that are valued by society. So an epic hero is not going to be a character who just kind of sits idly by and twiddles his thumbs. He's going to be a character that does things that are valued by society, that show courage and leadership and honesty, and he's larger than life, right? He's never just a regular Joe Schmo off the street. And we have some examples of epic heroes in our modern culture, like these guys. And yes, I picked little cute cartoon versions of them because I like them better. And we have Superman, in case you guys are not familiar with these superheroes, okay? We have Captain America, Wonder Woman, and Black Panther. Now, I know I mixed DC and Marvel, okay? I know I did. I was trying to be fair. I was trying to be even. We all know that Marvel is better. Just in case you're that one is not Marvel. We all know that Marvel is better, okay? We know that. But I wanted to be fair. So we have these epic heroes, right? They are heroes that stand for something really important in a society, that show these really wonderful traits that we admire, and that go out of their way to take care of the people that they are heroes of, right? They're larger than life, and they help people. And they're heroes, right? They follow that traditional hero model. They're not doing things for their own selfish gain. They're doing things for others. And these are just a few examples. Any superhero that you can think of would qualify as an epic hero by modern standards, okay? And this leads me to my next point. I know you can kind of see the next slide a little bit each time I do this, and that's okay. The archetype. So if you're in my mythology class, or you were last trimester, you kind of know what an archetype is, right? An archetype is a typical character. A typical character, an action, or a situation that seem to represent a universal pattern of human nature. Okay? It's also, an archetype can also be known as a universal symbol, and it may be a character, theme, symbol, or setting. I'm going to read this slide, then we're going to talk. Many literary critics are of the opinion that archetypes, which have a common and recurring representation in a particular human culture or the entire human race, shape the structure and function of a literary work. Carl Jung, a Swiss psychologist, argued that the root of an archetype is in the collective unconscious of mankind. This phrase, collective unconscious, refers to experiences shared by a race or a culture. This includes love, religion, death, birth, life, struggle, survival, etc. These experiences exist in the subconscious of every individual and are recreated in literary works or in other forms of art. To simplify what an archetype is, it's something that you see in a movie, a book, a cartoon, and you see a character, you see a setting, you see a situation, and without anything happening yet, you kind of know what that thing is, right? So this image right here is of Captain Hook. Okay, you can see his little hook hand. If you've never seen Peter Pan, you don't know who that is. He's the bad guy, right? Now, we know he's the bad guy. I just told you he was the bad guy. I want you to look at his features, okay? Look at his little swirly mustache. Look at his eyebrows. Look at his dark clothing. Look at his frown. Even look at his hair, which is something else. When you look at this character, your first thought is probably not, well, that looks like a really nice guy that I want to sit down and have some coffee with. I want to sit down, I want to go to an ice cream parlor with this guy and just ask him about his day. He looks like a really swell fella. You're probably going to be like, oh, he has a hook for a hand, and his eyebrows are menacing, and he's scowling, and his clothes are very dark and elaborate. He probably is not a very good guy. He looks like a bad guy, right? Well, he's a villain archetype. You can look at him and know he's a villain. There are lots of different archetypes, and these are just a few. The mentor. So if you think about movies like Lord of the Rings, you have this Frodo who has to carry the ring to Mordor, and then you have Gandalf, who's this old wizened wizard who guides him along the way. You also have Sam, who's his best friend, who's a young guy who also guides him along the way. The hero. Think about any movie, any action movie. Usually the main character is the hero. The villain is what we just looked at, okay? The mother figure. If you've ever seen any of the Harry Potter movies, Molly Weasley fits that mother figure pretty well. But really, archetypes are just like, when you see it, you recognize what it is, right? You see, if you're in a movie, and if you're watching a movie, and the characters walk into an old, dark building filled with cobwebs, do you think they're going to be in a good situation or a bad situation? Probably a bad situation. That's an archetype. It's a situational archetype for danger or for darkness or for bad things that are going to happen, evil things are going to happen. Okay, those are archetypes. So, the function of the archetype. The use of archetypical characters, archetypical, that's fun to say, archetypical, and situations gives a literary work, or a movie, or a show, or a cartoon, or whatever, a universal acceptance, as readers identify the characters and situations in their social and cultural context. By using common archetypes, the writers attempt to impart realism to their works, as the situations and characters are drawn from the experiences of the world. Basically, writers use archetypes so that when the reader or the viewer sees it or reads it, they automatically feel more connected because they understand what's going on inherently, okay? So like if you're watching a movie and you can immediately recognize the hero, you feel more comfortable. If you're watching a movie and you immediately recognize that it's a story about good versus evil, if it's a story about Harry Potter versus Voldemort, good versus evil, that's a pretty clear example of good versus evil, then you feel more comfortable because you know what's going on, you know what to expect. Okay, here's your last question to answer, and it is on that blank document on Classroom. I want you to come up with an example of 5 of these archetypes from TV, movies, books, cartoons, comic books, etc. Okay, 5 of these. So you cannot use these examples, but here are some examples. The hero. Harry Potter is the hero in Harry Potter. Okay, the journey. That's a situational archetype. Frodo takes the ring to Mordor in Lord of the Rings. Right, Lord of the Rings here. The scapegoat. We didn't really talk about that one, but the scapegoat is like, what's a character that whenever things go bad, they're going to have to face the consequences. So in the Hunger Games, all of the tributes, Katniss, Peeta, Marvel, Glimmer, Rue, Cato, Enobaria, Finnick, all of the tributes from all of the years of the Hunger Games, all of them are scapegoats. So the problem is happening between the capital and its people. The tributes end up taking the fall, right? They're the ones that have to be killed. So they are the scapegoats. Anyway, you're going to choose 5. So choose 5 of these. If you want to get real fancy, you can look up other archetypes. There are way more than this. And you can choose some of those and find examples. If you were in my mythology class last trimester or this trimester, you should have a list, a comprehensive list. Comprehensive is not a good word. A much longer list of archetypes that you're more than welcome to use, but otherwise just pick 5 of these. Come up with one example for each of the 5. So if you pick the mother figure, the mentor, the hero, the villain, and good versus evil, you're going to come up with one example for each, okay? So one of this one, one of this one, one of this one, one of this one, and one of this one. Okay, not 5 of each. But you're going to pick 5 different archetypes. So let's say 5 different archetypes. One example each. Okay? Okay, well that's all I have for you today. I'll have another video tomorrow that goes over our second PowerPoint before we start actually reading the Odyssey. Now, you guys are going to be reading the Odyssey, but I'm going to make some videos reading at least parts of it. I haven't decided yet to help you along the way. If you have questions, text me. I'm going to set up my office hours today in Zoom instead of Google Meet. A few of you responded to my text yesterday, so I'm gonna try Zoom. Feel free to jump on there and we can talk. Otherwise, have a great day. I will send you another video either tonight or tomorrow. Miss you guys. Stay safe.